Hello, everyone. Welcome to Satsang on a beautiful Sunday, be it morning, afternoon, or evening. And thank you for joining me an hour early. It actually makes a big difference for me. It makes it a lot easier for me. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me. I'm using this mic here, and it appears as though the sound is good, good, excellent. That's my German accent. Push up the volume a touch. There we go. So I wanted to talk tonight about something that's been on my mind, and that is the subject of compassion. And the compassion being, it's simply our capacity, our cultivated, practiced capacity to be able to be present with suffering, even though there's nothing you might be able to physically or emotionally or have any capacity to actually make better for somebody. If somebody is hungry and you give them food, that is compassion. But if you can't, and yet still being willing to be present with that suffering and not turn away and not become indifferent, is the heart and soul of true compassion, which is the remedy for suffering. That's what compassion is. It is simply the capacity to be with suffering. And how do you cultivate it? How do you practice that? Right? Walk around the street and be with people who are having a lot of trouble. You actually don't have to go that far to find them, especially these days. It always starts, if it's going to be a regular practice that gets cultivated to the point where it becomes your way of being in the world, the practice must be first compassion towards your own suffering. In the Four Noble Truths of Suffering, which was the first real sermon or sutra that the Buddha gave, the very first of the noble truths of suffering was, there is suffering. It is just so direct. And when we apply that to ourselves, we don't try to push suffering away. We realize it is simply a fact of life. But here's the important factor of that that is overlooked. And I'm going to speak a little bit about where it actually comes from, what gives rise to suffering. But the first thing to recognize is that in Buddhism, there's a term I just recently learned, and it's called interbeing. And it's simply that the entire universe, all existence, is made possible by this interplay and dance of opposites. You cannot have day without night. You cannot have up without down. You cannot have masculine without feminine. You cannot have a right hand without a left hand. So every object in the universe always has two sides. If there aren't two sides, you don't have an object. So what's the opposite of suffering? Well, happiness. What that means is that the very energy that is now bound up in suffering is the energy of happiness when it is released from whatever is holding it in the shape of suffering. The fundamental, the primary, the essence of all suffering, right, is, well, on one level, it's resistance. It's just a resistance to what is. It's an unwillingness to be present with my own pain, right? Now, nobody can get through life without pain, and nobody can transcend pain, right? Because it comes with pleasure. There's pleasures in life, there's pain in life, there's joy in life, there's grief in life. You cannot escape this play of opposites. But when you are in resistance to this play, right, you turn pain into suffering. Right? And why do we do that? What is it that makes us so resistant to what is simply the reality of life? Well, again, we can look to Buddhism and also to Advaita Vedanta. The primary cause is ignorance. We don't know who we are. We have mistaken the movie on the screen for the real character. We have mistaken a concept of myself, an idea of myself, a set of beliefs about myself for myself. And as a result, I hold this belief as to who I actually am. I hold it so strongly that it literally shapes my perception to the point where whatever's happening in the world is being interpreted and given meaning through the filter, the veil of this ignorance of my true nature, of this idea that I have about myself. Life is functioning, but if I'm holding this idea, I'm going to project upon life what I think life is doing based on my feeling, my view of myself. Now, if I have a view of myself that's not me, it's going to be impossible to be content, isn't it? You'll get things, but they won't be satisfying. You'll have relationships, but they won't be satisfying because there's always going to be something off, right? Because genuine satisfaction or happiness comes from being in harmony with who you are. So until you have some sense of who you are, or at least headed in the right direction, there will always be this sense of discomfort, this sense of discontent that plays as the feeling of lack, the fear of lack, the fear of going without, the fear of not having my needs met, the fear of death, the fear of pain, right? All of which puts us in a very tense relationship with it. And that's what we experience on the emotional level as suffering. So what's the cure? Be with your own suffering. Be with your own pain. Right? And I saw the question here. I'll jump into it from Crispin. I'm right now waiting in front of the ER where my daughter is being checked because of internal bleeding. Nobody seems to know why. I suffer more than she does. Can my compassion help? Well, of course, your compassion will help, because what happens? Remember, look at what happens. When I was talking earlier, that happiness and suffering are the same energy. They are two sides of the same coin. Compassion liberates us from resistance to pain. And what happens to that energy of suffering then? It immediately and automatically shifts into happiness. Because if I'm not fighting with pain, if I just, of course it's going to be here, I'm going to experience it, everything is impermanent, it will come and go, there's no suffering in that, right? And so this is simply the ups and downs of life that we all face. And without that suffering, without that resistance, what do you have? Contentment, aka happiness. So can it help her? Well, and your follow-up question there, before even thinking about helping her, I must be peaceful and compassionate, right? That would be a very tall order, wouldn't it? Right? Nope, can't do anything. First, you have to be completely compassionate and peaceful, right? This is a practice, right? This is something that we cultivate over time. It becomes something that is, in a sense, learned, right? That's why meditation, yoga, all these things are practices, right? Yes, non-dual inquiry can break through that illusion of the false self in a second, the Zen moment. And Zen Buddhism is all about that. But Zen Buddhism is also full of practices, as is Advaita Vedanta. And Buddha gave all sorts of different practices to different people. He even used the example of the man with who raises horses, gives toy horses to the children, and little by little gives them the real thing. This is what he was talking about, the skillful means in regards to practice. So right now, you need to be present, compassionate towards your suffering about her, because they don't know what's the matter. You're her father, which is, it's likely that you are suffering more than she is. She might be thinking, "Oh, this is really inconvenient. I don't want to be here," um, or, but you're the father. It's, "Oh, what did I do? Oh, there should have been something. I could have done something," right? Fathers go there. So recognize all of that. Recognize the fear. Recognizing the pain of watching someone you love so dearly, right? um, experiencing something you don't want her to experience, and be with your own deep desire to heal it, to find a way, right? That desire to find a way, that desire to relieve suffering is a whisper from the inner God. It's a whisper from deep in the true heart. It's a whisper from the true self, because the true self is never cut off from the possibility of complete and total liberation, complete and total healing. So being compassionate is practiced first with yourself. I know you're compassionate towards her. I know you would do absolutely anything to take care of it. I know you'll stay with her the entire time. Right? So you will do for her everything you could possibly do. So now comes the inner work of transmuting your own resistance to pain, yourself and others, starting with your own pain about not being able to do anything, right? And embracing it. Right? Come here, pain. Come. You're allowed here. This is the great heart. Right? This is the bodhisattva. This is the goddess Kanon. Everything is welcome here. Right? Not everything is welcome here. Not everything is welcome in the body, but here, everything is welcome. This is the nature of true love, and that love doesn't always walk without shaking, right? But it's always walking in love. Right? So this is the nature of compassion, and we can't lose that. I hear a lot of non-dual teachers that I think only have half the story. You think, oh, there's no daughter, there's no ER, there's no pain, there's no internal bleeding, none of it that exists, nobody exists. But you can feel the absence of compassion in that, right? Because it doesn't do anybody any good, right? And if somebody's in the midst of fear about something, spouting off things like that, I actually consider to be destructive and irresponsible. It's just me. The people I admire, and the people I will recommend if people are interested in other teachers. Don't do that, right? And recognize that there are skillful means. There's a means to the end of suffering, right? As Buddha taught, not just say there is no suffering. Right? even though there isn't suffering as a reality. Suffering, the cause of suffering is our own misunderstanding, our own ignorance and misidentification of ourselves. Right? That's its actual cause. And obviously, who I think I am isn't really me, so that's not real. And so all the suffering that arises out of it isn't real. But until somebody sees that, merely saying it's not real is counterproductive. It doesn't help. Instead, I would say, there is suffering. You're experiencing it right now. Let's get to the cause of it. Okay? And you get to the cause of it by simply allowing yourself to be. Even if you can get to the point of embracing and even welcoming your pain. Here it is. Here it comes. And the fact that that first noble truth is there is suffering just says to us, don't deny it. Don't try to pretend, right? Yes, right now, I am suffering. I want to be free of suffering. I want to free everyone from suffering. What is the cause of this suffering? Right? And the cause of this suffering is that essential ignorance that has given rise to a false sense of self that is also not real, but believed to be real, creates it as an experienced reality. Right? And then little by little, you can allow your daughter to have the experience that this life has in store for her. I wouldn't want to rob anybody of their experience. If somebody had, there was a time I'd say, geez, if I don't, I didn't want to be tied into bed at 2 years old. I didn't want to be neglected and abused. There's all sorts of things I didn't want to experience. And like, gee, what had my life been like if I hadn't had that? I'd been more successful, all sorts of things. But I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be here. Right? There's just no way we can fathom the various conditions and circumstances of our life if we all knew what the end game was, which is liberation, we would not question the wisdom of everything that's happened. Right? We question it. I resist what's happening now. This shouldn't be happening because I'm supposed to be getting over there, right? Well, whatever you come up with as the human goal, as the ultimate in human pursuit, it will fall far short of the reality. Right? The reality is beyond anything you can possibly imagine. And recognizing that every single event in your life will make sense. It is there and it needs to be there. And don't resist it being there for yourself or for anybody else. Right? So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I think I've covered Crispin's question as well. And I'm sure you'll respond to that, Crispin. I am there for you, my good friend. Not a problem. As are everybody here. You can look at the comments. The support, your Sangha is with you. So, hello, Rosario in Madrid. I am you says, lots of love to you and your daughter, Crispin. Yeah, see that? I am you. The physical existence, with all its suffering, is a projection of the mind. Just an image, a dream. Is there an evolution in this system of consciousness, a goal to reach? Is there an end to all of this? Well, yes. There is an end to it. Again, I can quote Buddha from the Four Noble Truths of Suffering. There is suffering. There is a cause to suffering. There is an end to suffering. Because if everything has a cause, has an end. If we can isolate the cause, right, we can bring about its end. If we're sustaining the cause through our ignorance, well, we will not bring about its end. You can't, right? If you keep throwing gasoline on a fire, it will keep burning because the fire is a result of the fuel available. You keep giving it fuel, keep putting on wood and the like, it will just keep burning because it is interbeing, right? It's fuel, and the word nirvana simply means extinguished. And it is, the example is the flame. It runs out of fuel, it ceases to be. So the suffering we experience is being sustained. That's its cause, right? Knowing the cause, we have there will be an end to it. And then he goes through the Eightfold Path, which is the means to that end of putting an end to suffering. And the first of the 8 steps in the path are right views, seeing things as they are. Right? So I draw a distinction, and this is a very important one, a very important one, because we can talk about levels of consciousness and things like that. So we can use consciousness in a relative way. Whereas we can think of I consciousness. In fact, the Buddha speaks of the 18 domains, right? The eye, sight, and seeing, right, are 3, and all the other things, that's 15, and then there's the mind is the other one. Each one of those is a different kind of consciousness, isn't it? The eye consciousness is aware of form. The ear consciousness is aware of sound. So we can think of it in that genus. We also can think of it in terms of different levels of consciousness, right? And so when we look at it, if we look at it from that relative perspective, then we see that, yes, on that level, consciousness is evolving, obviously. I'm much better at doing this than I was 10 years ago, right? I have more skills than I did 10 years ago. I have less in some ways than 10 years ago. So yeah, there is an evolution to everything in life, isn't there? Nothing stays the same. It's always a moment in this infinite continuity, which we could call evolution. I prefer to just call it, there's just a continuity of being. that cause and effect are really one. Every cause has an effect, and every effect is itself a cause. And so this is the great beauty of Shiva's wheel. So, but when you see it as an infinite continuity, you see there is no end to it, right? In terms of, there's no ultimate goal because it's constantly transmuting itself, right? When you listen to a great composer like Mozart, you can see evolution in his work, right? Would there be an end to it? Well, he's not here anymore, so it stopped. But had he gone on, right? No, it would have just kept going, developing, evolving, changing. This was very dramatically evidenced in Beethoven, whose the stuff he did was clearly on his way to writing a 10th symphony when he died, but it was it was almost sounding like 20th century music. What he was doing was really quite out there, especially for the time. We just gotten into Brahms and Liszt and Chopin and the like. So you can see that there's no end to it, and there's no ultimate goal to it. And yet every moment seems to have a beauty and a perfection to it, right? That couldn't have happened without the prior moment. And just when you think it couldn't get any better, it gets better. So there's not an ultimate thing that, yeah, this is it. I'm in heaven. I wish I wrote a magazine. I'm done. I'm bored. Now what do I do? It's not like that. It is both endless and has no ultimate goal or purpose, right? It is simply the nature of being. Now let me talk for a moment about the what is meant by the word consciousness or pure consciousness when we're talking about it from a strictly non-dual point of view, not relative anymore, but absolute. Nisargadatta simply referred to it as the absolute. Right? And he used that term consciousness in relative terms. Um, these days, most of the teachers of this ilk, my brothers and sisters, um, talk about pure consciousness or pure awareness, and will use mind and thought patterns and the like instead of consciousness. But basically, it's we're talking about the same thing. There's to all of the evolution, which is undeniable. Things are changing constantly, right? Things are constantly transforming. So it's it's self-evident, right? Yeah, there's the constant change, right? But it never becomes chaotic. It never becomes formless. It's always form upon form upon form upon form. But notice something extremely subtle, and that is, in order for us to perceive change, right, there has to be something viewing it that isn't changing. There has to be, there has to be a constant, because all of this is in constant flux. How would you know it was in flux if you were not sitting in a place that was not in flux? Now, this is something to ponder. Right? If that which was aware of this constant evolution, was itself in the evolution, I'd have no sense of there being an evolution. It would just be happening. The way animals evolve in life. It'd be like I'm sitting on a train, I'm sipping a glass of wine. And I've been on like the high speed rail in Europe, 300 miles an hour, right? And it's not even shaking, right? There's no sense of motion in that. Yet relative to the outside, somebody watching, this thing's buzzing by. So there has to be an ultimate place, a final place from which all the change and flux and evolution is being witnessed, and that must be in a state that is not changing, is not fluctuating, and is not evolving. The time can only be witnessed from the place of timelessness. And the wonder of this is that who is it that's witnessing the evolution? That's you. Which makes you have to at least consider the possibility that I must be that timeless place, that ultimate, that isn't fluctuating, that isn't evolving, that is simply witnessing it. And then look at the nature of your witnessing itself. And while throughout your entire life, there's been nothing but change, right? The world look one way when you're 5, look another way when you're 10, 15, all the way up, to where I am and beyond. Yeah, and if you really look, right, take my word for it, the subtle act of witnessing has not changed. It has not evolved. It's not come from one. It has not gone from one thing to another. To kind of just tie this all together, that is the real you, the changeless you. As I said, the essential cause of suffering was the ignorance as to who you are. Mistaking yourself for that which is constantly changing is the birthplace of suffering. That's the ignorance. Because if it's constantly changing and I'm trying to hold on to things because there's nothing stable, there's nothing for me to hold on to, right? Of course, I'm going to be afraid that everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. But once I know that I am not that, I am this changeless background, the fear falls away. The sense of lack falls away. Because those are all in the picture. That is the true I. And you can't put a name on it. You can't put a form on it, right? How can you? The moment you have a form, every form is just a momentary coming together of of conditions, right, that give rise to a flame. And the entire thing is, this is the interbeing as a package. There's no fire without heat, without fuel, without combustion. There's no. They are one, right? And so this is a cycle, right? This is a cycle of interdependence. Whereas you, witnessing depends on nothing. I simply am. I am not the result of something else. I am not here because of a chain of causation. Right? This breaks the chain of causation. Another word for the chain of causation is karma. Tea tastes really good tonight. So, hopefully, I am you. That was kind of an elaborate answer, but I did want to. Well, I just felt like going off there, so I did. So I hope that helps. Hello, Roberto. Good to see you in Rafa Nadal's country. Oh, who has better life than you, man? You just kind of wander around showing people stuff. Roberto is in tourism, so. Johanna, hello to you. Why do humans get stuck on certain conditioning? What is the purpose of protecting a sense of self on that condition, or projecting a sense of self on that conditioning? Thank you. Well, I think I covered a lot of it, where the projection is, right? It isn't, there's not really a purpose to it. It is the natural result, the inevitable result of identifying yourself as the body-mind. Identifying myself not as the witnessing principle, or the true I am, or the absolute, but as something within the dance of opposites. Now, what if I take that on and become that identity? Immediately, everything now that I see is in relationship to this. This becomes the central reference point. Right? Whatever you say, I am, fill in the blank, I am this. Well, that's the reference point by which you are going to see everything. Everything is going to be in relationship to that. That's the projection. Right? And the sense that I am the body-mind, that belief then sees all of the conditioning of the body-mind as itself. This is the projection. Right? Even though there is no self in the conditioning of the nervous system or the mind, the sense of identity sees one there, even though there's none there. Just like you see a face in the cloud, right? You know, you see an angel in the cloud, right? It's not in the cloud. There's no angel there. There's no face. There's no city, right? All the things that we see, they're not there, right? It's just that particular shape is there from the angle with the lighting just right, and then the mind, and this is what it does. It simply projects a face on it. Or, you know, somebody sees Jesus in their toast, right? You hear things like that, right? And there's a funny funny story at the University of Illinois in Champaign. There's a beautiful performing arts theater called the Krannert Center. Just an amazing building, 5 stories for the sets and stuff like that. Just a beautiful building that was donated. It was paid for by Krannert, this fellow's name. He invented something, I don't know what it was. He went to U of I. He became very wealthy because he had this invention. He was an engineer, and so he donated the money to have this place built. Well, he died before it was completed, and so his wife was touring it on the grand opening, right? Because it took a long time to build it, and the lobby was just stunningly gorgeous. I saw it. I visited it a couple of times. Just this marble, marble walls and floors. I was just stunningly beautiful. She was walking through and got offended. She looked, look at the pornographic picture, tear it down. And she had him actually tear down the marble wall because she saw what she said was a pornographic image, completely ignorant of her own projection. So that's an example. We do it all the time. That's why the Rorschach test is so powerful, because it doesn't mean anything. You project into it. Now, going a little bit, I'm digressing a bit. The idea is that once I believe myself to be this person, I will then start seeing that person everywhere and everything in reference to that person, right? When my I becomes this, you automatically become that. And that's the process by which it works. We get stuck there, right? Because we don't question the belief. We don't question the I. You know, we'll say, well, maybe I didn't see him right. We'll make adjustments and things like that, or we'll try to change things out there. But nobody ever says, where's the projecting coming from? Maybe I should turn around and take a look at the projector. That is the sense of I. This is what Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta are all about. Forget about what that. It's a projection. What's the I that's doing the projecting? Who am I? And remember that fundamental, that original ignorance is where all the pain and suffering comes from. And that suffering, once you can first be with it, you can break the chain of ignorance, and that suffering transforms into happiness. How's that, Joanna? Does that answer your question? Roberto, I have been feeling shattered lately, physically and emotionally. I have not felt like doing anything at all, even the chakra course. I procrastinate continuously, and that is affecting everything. All right. Can you be with all of it? Can you actually say, okay, I feel shattered, right? Can you sense that you're trying to get rid of the shattered feeling? You want it to go away. Understandable. I'm not, it's not, this isn't stoicism, right? I would endure pain, stick more needles in me. It's not that, right? But you cannot run away from your own feelings. We try. We have all sorts of ways of doing it. These days, we've got more ways than you can count. But it's never worked. It's never, ever worked. So, can you recognize there is suffering? Right now, I am suffering my experience. Right? What is the cause of this suffering? Well, let's just start by being present with the suffering. Don't feel like doing anything at all. And the fear, right, that if I don't do anything at all, nothing's going to happen, right? And now stay with that fear. It's affecting everything. Well, okay, right? You're not going to be able to just make it go away. If you could, you would have succeeded at it by now. Right? But you can feel how much resistance there is to simply being present with our own feelings. And that's all it is, which is being present with yourself. And the other word for that is self-acceptance. And the other word for that is unconditional love. This is the heart and soul of it. Right? And when things persist over time, when they just don't yield, it is a call to an increasingly deep practice. Right? I didn't ever say this was easy. Oh, well, piece of cake. You can allow anything. Never have I said that. Right? It runs contrary to everything we've been taught. It's run contrary to our entire culture, the way society has been constructed for the last 12,000 years. It runs completely contrary to it. And yet, this is what all the great sages of all time have taught. This is the way. Walk ye in it. Right? Just quietly be with the pain, the fear, the doubts, the regrets, the unfulfilled desires. Right? Say, you're allowed to be here. I don't like you. I don't want anything to do with you, but I accept you. You are here. You are a part of me, and I want to be whole. And the only way I can be whole is if I actually take in all of me. This isn't outside of me. And these feelings aren't over there somewhere. They're here, right here inside of me. I cannot become my whole self if I'm denying myself. The denying of myself is the suffering. The acceptance of myself, the suffering is transmuted into happiness. This is how it works. I wouldn't steer you wrong. Thanks, Roberto. And everybody pay attention to that. There's not one of us who has not felt exactly what Roberto is feeling. Maybe even today you did. So, thank you, my dear friend. Hello. Hello, David and Elaine. Good to see you. John, I've been reading a lot about the conscious and subconscious mind. Is the subconscious mind the same as awareness? No. In pure awareness, all words break down. You cannot call it conscious or unconscious. You cannot even say it exists or does not exist. It is completely beyond the fathom of the mind. It is beyond all human research. Right? Awareness is simply what you are. It is what is. You cannot call it conscious. These are all words. These are all conscious, unconscious, right? They're subconscious. These are all lines on the continuum, aren't they? There's very definite meanings of subconscious and unconscious. And basically, when you look at it psychologically, the simplest way I put it is, where do thoughts go when you're not thinking them? We imagine that there's this place where thoughts kind of go and hang out, right? Like they're in the green room, waiting for their cue to come on stage, right? I even made a video a long time ago. It's a little controversial, called "There Is No Unconscious Mind," because in reality, there isn't. There are only programmed responses. Something happens, an event takes place, a pre-programmed response gets triggered in the nervous system, and that generates, in the moment, feeling and thoughts. It's a very spontaneous thing, right? It's not a mind, any more than the computer is a mind. There's no sentience, there's no awareness in it at all. Right? The subconscious tends to be the things that might have been thoughts at one time. The unconscious is pure physical structure. I don't draw I don't see much difference between them, except perceptually, right? We're describing something nobody's ever seen. Being driven by the very thing that they say we're trying to describe, right? If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. So pure awareness is simply the fact of being aware. It is not conscious in the sense that it requires anything to be conscious of. Right? It is simply, it is self-aware. Are you aware? I could ask the question, right? And you would have to say yes, right? And I would say, okay, how do you know? In between when I asked the question and when you answered, where did you look? Right? That's self-awareness. But self-awareness is different because it's not a subject object. It's not you talking about something else. Self-awareness is I am aware of myself. How can I do that? When I am one. Well, that's the non-dual awareness. I know. How do I know? I don't know. I just know. I just am. I am not am as something. I'm not something that is. My existence being acknowledged by something else. That's not an infinite recursion. It is not an infinite regression. There's a point at which it has to stop in the pure oneness of I am. Right? The I am prior even to the feeling I am. Because even the feeling I am couldn't be there if you weren't there first. So the first pure awareness is beyond all opposites. It has no subject and object. There is no subject and object to it. Or you could say it is both subject and object, the subject of the subject. So, is that how's that doing for you there, John? Right? Does that cover it? Everything you learn about the conscious and subconscious mind, some of it might be useful, but all of it is speculative. All of it is stuff being made up. All of it is, there are things happening, right? Clearly influences in our life that we seem to have no conscious control over. Right? And so we want to try to explain those, and we came up with these words: the conscious, subconscious, unconscious, ego, superego, and id. All of these things to describe things we can't see. They're models, nothing more. Right? What is it that they're describing? And if it's a mental model, it's a pure conception. In other words, it's made up, right? It is the mind trying to understand that which is beyond itself. And it can't do that, right? The reactive patterns of the nervous system are not mind. They're programmed responses. And even the term nervous system is a model. I use it a lot as a teaching tool, as the skillful means. But even that is just a concept. Even the nervous system does not really exist per se. It is all mind. It is all projections of the mind. Well, I said enough on that. Okay. Thank you, John. Love you, buddy. Hello, Melissa. Peace to you too. Hello, Ava. Roberto. My parents never talked to me about their parents, and I did not ask. I never met them. I always felt I did not have any foundations to grow from. That's a very common feeling, and it's very true. I was listening to a talk from Thich Nhat Hanh, of about hungry ghosts, and the hungry ghost is a model. It's an image, right? It's a metaphor in Buddhism for that unquenchable hunger that we all feel, if not always, often. And the image of the hungry ghost in Buddhism is a beautiful image. It's these ghost beings, right? They kind of float around. They have huge bellies, right? To symbolize huge appetites, insatiable appetite. They got huge mouths. They can just gobble up everything, but their throats are thinner than a human hair. They can digest nothing. I would think if you look at people and their engagement with social media, you'll see hungry ghosts. Huge amounts of information, all different kinds of information, extreme information, divisive information of all kinds, and yet none of it's being digested. There's no real wisdom. There's no everything. There's nothing. There's no reference point by which any of this can actually turn from just chewing into real nourishment. Right? So it's a beautiful image of that. He made a comment that, wow, it just kind of blew my mind. He talked about meeting many hungry ghosts. Many of them come to Plum Village that he has, where his monasteries around the world for to find something to connect to. And he says that our society today is producing hungry ghosts, tens of thousands of hungry ghosts a day. And I have to agree. We live in a spiritually and morally bankrupt world. So we don't have roots. We've lost our capacity to trust. The world is falling apart because nobody trusts information anymore. Nobody trusts any kind of government authoritative. Nobody trusts companies. We don't trust the media. You can't exist without some kind of source, some kind of uniting factor that we can trust, that we can believe in. And people used to believe in their countries, their systems, because, well, they were a little bit more believable. Right? There's always been an element of corruption to it, but now the corruption is the mainstream. There isn't anything but corruption, right? And to them, it's not corrupt at all. So, yes, we have to find our own foundation. I didn't get any from my family. The juvenile delinquent. I had, I just nothing. The school didn't do it, right? The closest I got was the identity as a musician, which at least had an artistic bent to it. It gave me something I could hold on, and the people I hung out with, that was it. Otherwise, I was just floating, and I eventually felt that to the degree that it just completely just destroyed me, which was my opening. So you might want to ask about it. My brother, interestingly enough, has gotten extremely interested in genealogy, and he's trying to trace everything down. He's found a couple more crazy relatives. My mother and her sisters were not the only ones. It seems like there were more of them around. So you can see this kind of craving to have a sense of roots, and you can understand now what it must have felt like and feel like to the Black community to have had it just taken away from them, right? completely obliterated. The Native Americans, where the concerted, intentional attempt to destroy their culture, take away their roots. You can feel this is what they felt like. It's like, who are we? This is why Malcolm X took the name Malcolm X, right? He said, I'm not taking that name. That came from the slave owners. I got that. It's not my name. I don't know what my name is. So I'm Malcolm X. Just incredibly powerful when you realize that. And it's universal. It's universal now, right? We see that in the millennials, even in the Gen X that were before them. It's not their fault. We have given them we've given them nothing but fluff. We've given them crappy food that's not nourishing, crappy ideas that aren't nourishing, crappy appetites that aren't nourishing. We've creating a world of hungry ghosts. So one of the things you're doing by being here, and you've been here with me for a while, is healing that, is giving yourself that place. And we all need it. We need to have a Sangha. That's why the three treasures, the three pillars of Buddhism are the Dharma, which is the teaching, the Buddha, which is the embodiment of the teaching, and the Sangha, which is the community of those in the teaching. It's just incredibly important, because this is where we will create the kind of self-confirming and supportive community that helps us come back to that place of stability, which we enjoyed when we were still wandering around as hunter-gatherers, because we had a relationship with each other that was very clear. We had a relationship with the earth that was very clear, and now it's been completely shattered. And the relationship we have is with mind pictures that are fictional and constantly in flux. And if you're trying to find something stable in that which is impermanent, you will suffer. But if we can see that that's the cause, the suffering is transmuted into happiness. And I've said that a bunch of times today. I guess it's important. So what would you suggest in order for one to be able to focus on everyday life? Focus on you. Right? Little by little, we let go of this intense desire to fix things or change things or make things better, and instead ask the deep question, what is the cause of my suffering that will allow me to become happy? Where is this suffering actually coming from? Right? And the only way to get to that suffering is to completely make friends with your feelings. They are your feelings. That is, they are a part of you. You cannot get rid of you. The rain cannot get rid of the cloud. Right? And so do what you need to do during the day, even if there's no energy or motivation in it. Right? Just do what you have to do. But don't take on too much, be responsible, do what you need to do for your work and that sort of stuff, but keep it simple, keep it direct, don't turn it into a great ambition or something. Just and devote yourself to being free. And being free means free of suffering. Free of suffering means to be happy. They are the same energy. I can take a lump of gold and I can make a beautiful angelic being, or I can melt it down and I can make an ugly, nasty looking gargoyle. They're made of the same thing. What is shaping the gold that is you? That's the question. And it is what is shaping that it is turning it into suffering or the gargoyle, or it can be shaped into happiness or the angel. Love you, Brie. Love you, Roberta. Elaine, hello, Elaine. Wishing you and your daughter love and best wishes. Everybody's just totally with you, Crispin. Beautiful. Robbie in Romania, hello, hello, hello. Hello, Mary Sykes. Saying hello to everyone. There's Melissa. Look at that. Thank you. Hari Om Ji and everyone. We'll keep your daughter in our prayers, Crispin. There's Tatiana. Hello, Merck. Hello, and all beings being. Greetings. Greetings from Denmark, from Dorte. David and Elaine, what can be understood with the term states of consciousness is used by some. It's more understood that there are different states and variety of experience appearing in consciousness. But a state implies something that is not permanent. Many thanks. Yep. Yeah, that's exactly correct. And it's just really a matter of terms, right? And most of our terms are relative, because the absolute, this absolute place of the unmoving conscious, the timelessness, out of which time is appearing, is simply unknown. Right? That's the dark space, the empty. The thing. What is that? We're only familiar with that which we are experiencing, and within that, yes, you will see different states, which are different views, different insights, different different levels of understanding, right? But those are appearing in consciousness, right? Consciousness itself is not mutating, right? Just like space isn't mutating, right? Everything appears within space, right? But we don't talk about different states of space. It's all space, right? And consciousness is like space. It's one of the key things used to describe it. It is space-like, right? And because we don't really know space. We can't describe space, right? Einstein went so far to say that space doesn't actually exist without objects in it. It becomes completely undefined. The what we know of space is the distance between two objects. Take out the objects, and what do you have? Inconceivable. Consciousness is like that, right? And consciousness, conscious of nothing but itself, is what we refer to as the absolute. So it is mostly, we're talking about states of the conscious and unconscious and subconscious. What we're really talking about are different modes of experience, right? And consciousness, as I use the term, and most spiritual teachers, non-dual teachers today do use the term, it doesn't go through states. It is stateless. It is timeless. It is indescribable. So, thank you for that. Jay, can you explain the difference between suppressing thoughts and feelings versus observing and acceptance of it? Are we really suppressing when we turn our attention away and place it on what's deeper? If there is an intention to get rid of the feeling, to not have the feeling, to to do anything but be with the feeling, you are suppressing. Now, interestingly enough, when you really examine it deeply, the thoughts and feelings that are uncomfortable, that we want to suppress, are being witnessed. They are already being observed. It's just happening. They wouldn't be there without you observing them, right? So the witnessing is happening. Right? Also, that's there is the intention to suppress them. Is that not also a solid object, right? A solid mental object that is also being witnessed. The impulse to suppress, it also witnessing has to be there first, right? Because it appears to it. So what enters into the picture is a deeper sense of acceptance, the heart energy of unconditional love, right? Which recognizes that feeling is there, recognizes the impulse to suppress it, and says, it's okay, you can be here. You're here already anyway. Even the resistance to you, I am witnessing. And so you see that witness and the pure heart of love are one. Because the witnessing is already witnessing. It's already there. Right? And so all the resistance is actually not in the witness. Because it too is being witnessed. The only thing that can't be witnessed is the witness itself. Because it can't because it's not two. So when you are in that state of completely with equanimity with those feelings, and attention continues to turn inward, trying to turn all the way, right? All the way, leaving dropping identification with and intention for whatever is experienced, and resistance and suppression are just intentions about that, also being witnessed. The attention is attempting to turn more and more to behold the witness itself, to behold the beatific image, yeah, to behold the reality, which is non-dual. It's beyond subject and object. So the attention can only look away, right? It's not denying any of it. It's simply acknowledging it because everything else is there. But it's going beyond. It wants to go beyond to freedom. The desire to go to freedom is bringing attention more and more back towards itself, until finally the disidentification with all of this takes place. But there's no denial of it. Right? Even with the disidentification takes place, there's still pain. I heard Muji speaking the other day of pain that he had. He says it was completely unbearable. There was no position he could get in. He actually walked outside. Students were there wanting to help me. He says, "No, just leave me alone." There was nothing I could do. I had no moves. He said, I had one move. I surrendered to it. So here he is, fully enlightened master, pain. Right? Did everything he could to get out of it, couldn't get out of it, and just surrendered to it. Right? So life will never be free of the opposites. We have to understand that, right? That's what it is. When you finally go to that ultimate place, right? The ultimate beyond, right? Which is inexplicable and ineffable. All opposites are gone, right? And yet they're not gone. I can't even describe it. What can I say? So this is a really very important point, and I want to thank you for this question, Jay. Because we're not turning away, right, to avoid or get rid of. We're turning away to get to the source, right? If I take my attention off of my immediate suffering, in the deeper contemplation of the cause of suffering, I am not suppressing the suffering, right? I'm seeking freedom from it. And of course, that's why the Buddha, why Siddhartha became the Buddha. He was seeking the answer to suffering. That was his quest, right? When he sat down on that night where he finally found the answer, I am not getting up until I have the answer to suffering. Because he saw there was a cause to it. He saw that there was something out of whack. What was it that made this happen? From ignorance to all sorts of life tragedies, to discontent, to ultimately old age and death. What? Right? He found it, and he laid it down so we could follow it. What is the cause of suffering? Ignorance of who you are. That's it. And so turning away from all of it, from what's going on, whatever happens to be happening, whatever's the suffering is, whatever you are resisting, all of your intentions, it's all here. And I am witnessing them all. Therefore, I am not all of them. So I let go of that resistance as best I can. I embrace the pain as best I can. And I turn my attention, that is, I remove my identification with them, or identification with the one trying to get rid of them, to answer the question, who am I really? Who is the witness? Who is it that's let this in before I even knew what was happening? And aren't I witnessing? Well, I'm the witness. Who am I? Who is this I? And it is the deep urge to simply to see God. So removing your attention from the thoughts and feelings is not an attempt to get away from them. It's an attempt to become cured of the habit of identification with them and allowing them to determine the happiness of your life, the well-being or ill-being of your life. Which that's not suppression. That's wisdom. Okay, let's see. States, influence. I got it. So that one. Thanks, Jay. Then the thoughts, feelings. Got you. Hello, Sue. So good to see you too. There's Barbara in Sweden. Huge comforting hug, Crispin, from Roberto. God, Crispin, you are so loved. If you have an update on us by the time we've run out of time here, we all really want to know. Hello, Liza, Facebook user. Do you have any thoughts on an afterlife? Does it even exist? One of my favorite quotes from Muji says, "You only live once, but that's forever." This isn't the end, okay? Now, and I say that not because I've had a near-death experience. I haven't, okay? Not that I deny people that do, but because I have seen within the context of my own life a continuity, something that never changed. And I acknowledge something that most people won't acknowledge. Sorry about that. I had the door open. It was hot, getting warm in here. I'm cooling it off. I and everyone else was taught that the world was here. It's been here, Big Bang, 10 billion, 13.8 billion years. And our world formed, it's 4 billion or something like that. But this was here, and I got born into it, right? Or I came out of it in some way. Even the idea of reincarnation, multiple lifetimes, karma, and that sort of thing. There's this place called Earth, and we keep being born. I die out, I get born back in again, I get die out again. Well, through my own spiritual research and inner inquiry, I said, well, that's one way of interpreting it. But when I looked at my actual experience, I didn't have the experience of being born into some place and leaving. The experience I had was that a world appeared to me. I was the constant, and the world came and went. Now, notice, the exact same phenomena, different interpretation. And I'd like you to ponder that. Right? From your point of view, so there was this world that appeared. Right? Which means that what we call death is simply this world's going to disappear. I'm the constant. And when I look through my entire life, even the experience as far back as I can remember, or even what I can speculate what it must have been like, I can see this absolutely unchanging, unmoving thing that's been there the whole time. I call that consciousness. I call that the witnessing. I call it awareness. Doesn't matter what you call it. We all had it. Because it has never changed. It appears to be completely outside of time. Time appears to it. Then prior to life, after the life, have no meaning for it whatsoever. There's no birth and there's no death. There was never a starting point for me. So there's no ending point for me. Worlds come and go. I don't. Like a dream. I fall asleep at night. I go through multiple worlds and then they're gone. Right? So the idea of having more lives or an afterlife would simply be this world disappears, another world does appear. Now, if I interpret that as saying the world was here and I'm gone somewhere and I'm going back in again, or I can say, well, I haven't gone anywhere, but this world has appeared. exactly the way it happens every night when you fall asleep and have a dream. A world appears out of nowhere, right, within consciousness. And you're conscious of it, and you play a part in it, and you have an identity in it. You have a body in it. You can do things in it. And then away it goes. Now, we don't think that I go to sleep at night and I go off into another world. We recognize that it's appearing and disappearing. So I just took that in my own experience. And when I look at it, that seems much more believable to me than there being a world that I keep going in and out of. Or that this is it. It started, it's going to run its course. And when this body finally, we call it dies, I will be no more. It will be oblivion. Poof. Right? Which is the assumption based on this is a hard stop. This is where it started. This is where it ends. I am the body. Consciousness is nothing but a function of the body. Therefore, when the body stops functioning, so does consciousness. I will cease to be. Even though there's absolutely nothing in science that has pinpointed any structure within the body that could be regarded as consciousness. And there are many, many people in the scientific community who don't think it's actually that. And it's still regarded as one of the big mysteries. What is matter, and how did matter give rise to consciousness? Assuming that it did, right? Notice, right? That's an assumption. So I just take the position through my own inquiry and looking, and the willingness to deny what everybody else believes, simply because there's another way of looking at it, right? And if I assume that consciousness comes from matter, I won't even bother looking at that. But if I don't, like many people who are in the scientific community, many of which are even convinced that it isn't, that consciousness is something completely separate from it, even to the point where consciousness gave rise to what we call matter, not the other way around. Which means then that I would not die. I was not born into a world, and I'm not going to die out of a world. There is no life, a birth or death for me. And to me, that's become a conviction. So it's the kind of thing I urge you to ponder. This is something to be contemplative about. First, you can see, well, okay, it's like the sun going around the earth, right? When we realized that the sun wasn't going around the earth, that we were spinning, and that's what made it appear that way, it didn't change the way anything looks. We just reinterpreted the experience. We now know what actually happened. I say the same thing about birth and death. Just a little more radical, that's all. Let's see. Thank you, Facebook user. So don't worry about your afterlife. The still point of the turning world. Oh, beautiful. I like that. Thank you. I think you covered our question on states of consciousness in response to IMU. Great. Thank you a lot. You're welcome, IMU. Hello, Steph. Much love from Germany. Much love from Germany here, too. Recently suffered stoicism. I love it. Good. Good. I don't know a whole lot about it, except as a philosophy and kind of the watered down version people think of. You're just going to go without a lot of stuff. Don't think so. Mary Sykes, I know what you're talking about, Roberto, about not wanting to do anything. Yeah. A lot of people feel like that. And, part of it, I have to say, part of it is simply our society, right? Because it's really becoming apparent that almost all the governments on the planet are corrupt. They're controlled by a small number of people, and none of it is for my benefit. Why in the world do I participate in a system that has no interest in me whatsoever? It's trying to convince me that it's my to my benefit or threaten me in some way, yeah, why do I want to do anything? Why do I care? Right? Well, the answer is you don't. So when you are choosing to do something, let it have meaning for you. Yeah, there are things we have to do, right? I have to charge for my courses. I have to occasionally ask for donations to keep this going. I have to do that because this is the system in which we live. But I also recognize the sickness of the system, the futility of the system, and I do everything I can to move that system to a higher place, right? And to do that through love, not through divisiveness, not by picking sides, but through love. So Crispin has good news for us. Thank you, GP. Thank you all for being with us. My daughter is now home again. No need for worries, they also said. Yay. So happy. So happy. And now a whole bunch of people going, yay, thanks for the good news, Crispin. Thank you for telling us. Everybody loves to hear this. Oh, wonderful. Rosario says, thank you. Good news. Dale, why is morning often a popular time to meditate? I would think you should be relaxed and fresh. I would think you should be relaxed and refreshed then. Is it a recovery from crazy dreams? Not that it's about becoming relaxed, but why morning? Get priorities in order? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. I love it really early in the morning because really early in the morning before anybody's up, just kind of the whole psychic environment is quite calm. There's not a lot going on. There's just not a lot of clutter. Also, it's not just the dreams. You may have just come out of a chaotic dream, and you just may need to just do a little breathing and stuff to relax yourself. That can be the case. But oftentimes we wake up, we're coming out of deep sleep. And deep sleep is closely akin to pure awareness. It is simply awareness of your own existence without any content. That's what the deep sleep is. There is no content. There's no you there. There's no sense of I. There's no ego. There's no thoughts. And so there's no time. There's no burdens. There's no responsibility. There's no suffering. It's pure. It's pure stillness. And in that beginning moment, what we call waking up is the sense of I arises. First, it's the sense of I. Then I am a body. I am a body in the world. I am a body. I'm a body in the world. And before you know it, what has arisen is the waking consciousness, the waking sense of self. Right? Before that happens, there's the emptiness. There's the moment as the awakening is appearing, and that's a very beautiful time to meditate. It's also, for most people, it's very fleeting. It happens so fast you don't even realize it. But when you first wake up like that, before you've taken on any responsibility for the day, to just turn within, right? You've literally postponed the starting of your day. You've put off putting on the costume of the I am a body in the world, right? Not quite yet. You're still laying in bed with maybe no clothes or little clothes. You haven't put on a costume yet, right? And so for that reason, early in the morning is often a good thing. But I do it all during the day. I do it before I go to bed at night. Just kind of just bring myself back into that point of nothingness, of emptiness. Right? It's also a very good time. This isn't meditating, but just from a point of view of managing one's life, it's a great time to put priorities in line. Go, all right, what's the most important thing for me to accomplish today? What do I accomplish today that if I accomplish that, I'd be good? Okay? There'll be other things as well, but what about this? What are some things that they really are the most important things to do today? Right? And those are they can help give some kind of order to your life, right? Which is very useful. So you're not just kind of floating. It's okay if you float too. That's all right. So I hope that answers it for you. Yeah. No, it's not about, well, not about being relaxed, but relaxation is a part of it. I mean, we're bringing, what is relaxation? It's not like, yeah, chilling, with a Mai Tai. What what it is you're bringing a sense of calmness to the body. It's dropping out of defense. It's dropping out of alertness. It's just letting itself enjoy the fact that it's here. It's safe. It's warm. It's fed. I'm, there's nothing I have to do right this second. And even if that's nothing I do have to do for 5 minutes, it does bring calm to the body, which is part of just being good to yourself, being good to the body. That's just part of being able to allow, right? That I was talking about earlier. So, thanks, Dale. Hey, another night shift. Thanks, says Peter in Italy. Thank you once again, GP. Oh, my pleasure, Peter. Maskaran Has, Sarosh. Oh, hello, Sarosh. Is it important to forgive my mother who did not love me or validate me as a child and now having those no validation issues? If yes, how do I let go of all the emotional baggage? No, it is not important to forgive. As I say, forgiveness is not an act. It is not something you do. It is not something you can do. That's the kind of thing that people, they want to force it. Okay, I forgive it, and they're not really forgiving it. What that becomes is a means of suppressing their anger, maybe even their hatred and rage, right? I'd much rather you feel the anger, hatred, and rage, right? And let that move through your system, because you can be very angry about it. You could be hateful about it towards your mother, but you can't say, I hate my mother, especially if you're becoming aware of this as a child, that, she puts me down every step of the way, and there's nothing I can do about it. It does. We know it's wrong. There's nothing we can do about it. As a child, you're powerless. So what do you do instead? Well, forgiveness is not something you do. It is a state you arrive at, right? And it comes through understanding. When you understand the reality of what happened, first, by accepting that it happened. One of the most important things for the healing of childhood abuse is the recognition that it really did happen. Because one of the things the child has to do is convince itself it never happened. This didn't happen to me. Or it wasn't that way, or it wasn't as bad as all that. These are all ways to try to suppress that. Yeah, it was that bad. It was abusive. It was horrific, right? And to devalue or invalidate a child is one of the most horrible things you can do to them, because you've literally crippled their capacity to fully function for their whole life, unless they reclaim this territory. So it's an acknowledgement that it happened, right? You become what I think Alice Walker referred to as the enlightened witness to that child that was abused. Okay? Because the child had no witness, so it had to deny it in itself. So you come along now and you're the witness of it. Yes, it really did happen. And you may find, if you use like EFT, which I showed you how to do, or you've been doing, you just go, okay, she did this to me. How do I really feel about this? How does this little kid feel? Right? And you may find sadness, grief, anger, rage, contempt, resistance, or resentment. And it's okay. They say, oh, of course you feel that way. Duh. Right? Now, that's the acknowledgement of your own feelings. Right? That liberates you from the suppression. That liberates all that energy. And when you liberate that energy, what happens? Suffering begins to transmute into happiness. Right? Then you can begin to look at Well, what in the world makes somebody do that? The same thing happened to them. Oh my God. Right? I was abused by their suffering, coming from a long line of abuses, going back to Adam. Right? At that point, understanding begins to dawn, and you realize that nobody, everybody acts from whatever level of consciousness they're on. And now I'm speaking relatively about consciousness again. Right? I can only act consciously to the degree I'm conscious. Right? To the degrees I'm unconscious, I'm going to act unconsciously. And what that means is I'm not out cold acting. What it means is that it's going to be nothing but programmed responses. I'm going to have no control or awareness I'm even doing it. I'm simply going to be acting like an automaton. So I'm going to do to my kids what happened to me because I had no consciousness of that, right? When consciousness begins to dawn, it sees the whole pattern. And seeing that whole pattern, you begin to realize that nobody in that whole chain was actually to blame. They were simply ignorant. And this is what it means to get to the understanding where you can forgive them as Christ did. Forgive them, Father. They didn't know what they were doing. And you can do that with a whole heart. And now all of the suffering is transmuted into happiness. Because now there was never even a perpetrator. It was a state of consciousness passed down from generation to generation. Nobody started it. Nobody's responsible for it. Nobody's to blame for it. And you can rejoice the fact that this generation, you are the one to put a stop to it. What a great honor. How's that, Sarosh? Beautiful. I hope that helps. That's the shortest I've ever gone on about forgiveness. Jay, thank you, G, because it wasn't really suppressing anything, but at some point I was like, am I just on a quest to catch everything that passes me by or to recognize what actually me? What's solid? Hello, yes. Yeah, we're not just trying to see every thought as it goes by. We're just recognizing thoughts are going, right? And I'm not my thoughts. That's the most important thing. And I'm not the emotions. Okay, so there's the emotion, there's bad feelings, there's emotional pain, there's resistance. They're happening. Okay, that's part of it too. I have to bring love and light to that. I can't deny it, right? But that's not me either. But the more I know who I am, the easier it is to bring light to all the wounded parts of me, to all of this stuff that's suffering. And then beyond you, beyond your own suffering, becomes the capacity and the power to transform other suffering. Now you're the bodhisattva. And yes, the attempt to turn away attention is to see who you are. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Jay, another father. Oh, it's a huge relief. Indeed it is. Carl, hi GP. How do I make the witness feel normal, safe? As a child, it felt that it was just me being me that caused my parents to abandon me. Logically, I know there is nothing wrong with the true me, but something still prevents me from fully trusting my witness. If my own mother disowned it, which she did. Thank you. Well, Carl, for the last 15 years, this is pretty much all I've been talking about. Longer than that, but in the last 15 years, it has solidified into what I call inner reconciliation, which is exactly how you do that. Obviously, the witness is beyond feeling normal or safe or abnormal and unsafe, because it is witnessing the feeling of safety or the feeling of danger. It's witnessing that, right? So it is inherently beyond it. Right? Now, I think you grasped that, right? And this is one of the things that happens, and one of my disagreements with a lot of way a lot of people teach non-duality is they stop there. and just say, this doesn't matter, right? So suffering doesn't matter. It's not Mahayana Buddhism. It says, oh, yes, it does matter. This is only halfway there. Now we turn around and we heal suffering, right? The bodhisattva vow. Suffering beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. This is the deepest. The bodhisattva seeks enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, not just for themselves. So, how then do you do that? Well, understanding. We have to remove our ignorance of what is going on here, of what is making this all tick. Right? I was in the absolute school for a while. Okay, none of this mattered. None of it was real anyway. So I'm just sticking in the absolute, right? And I wondered why this kept happening. I wasn't being absolute enough, right? Finally, it was probably in the, I don't know when it was, but at any rate, as I began to see more about the nervous system and conditioning and stuff, because I never heard that, when I had that first awakening at 19, none of this stuff was known. It was 1971. No, there was none of this. I never heard conditioning. What the heck was that? Right? That came later, right? Psychology classes and things like that, but it wasn't common knowledge as it is now. So you begin to understand, and again, I've got probably about 100 hours worth of material between the 3 levels of inner reconciliation, going into every last bit of this. Your assessment is absolutely correct. You were simply being you, right? And how else could you be, right? What else could you be but you, right? You don't ask the cat to bark. You don't ask the dog to meow. You just, that is what they are. You are what you are. But being just as you, just being you, ran into the lack of approval and maybe the downright hostility of your caregivers, of the tribe, of your society at large, starting with your parents and then moving outward. And so we come to the deepest existential crisis. It is unsafe to be me. I'm in danger from merely existing. Right? So being myself can get me killed. And that's how it feels in the nervous system. Right? It can get me killed. Right? And I can't not be me. What do I do? Well, in the most brilliant shell game you could possibly imagine, the nervous system takes all the characteristics of you that are offensive to the tribe and buries them where they can never be seen, make layers of defense, programmed responses to make sure that nobody ever sees it, and then creates a false version of you to show to the environment, forgets it's a false view of you, and believes that this is who I am. That's how it all happens. It's mind-blowing. This is what it is. I remember when I first saw that, I was just blown away. But that's what it does. This is why the inner work is difficult, because the nervous system is hell-bent on never letting anybody get to that, because if I get to who I really am, what happens? I die. That's the assumption that has put up all the layers. So that is what doesn't trust the witness. It doesn't believe in the witness. The witness doesn't exist. Okay? So little by little, we are creating, here's what has to happen. This is why I call it inner reconciliation. We have to create, what was it that caused all of this stuff to have to be pushed, caused you to have to be buried down in the basement for your whole life? What was it that made that happen? We talk about the parents and all that stuff, but when we look at it, the parents were doing it right? But what was the internal environment that happened, that precipitated it? It wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to be you. Now, the thing that holds this entire structure together is the assumption that it is not safe to be you. Now, even though your parents aren't there anymore, right? They're not a factor anymore. I assume you're grown up now, right? Why then, if the danger isn't there anymore, why isn't it? Why hasn't it been liberated? Well, the answer is simple. The only reason it hasn't been eliminated because the danger is still there. It's not stupid. When the danger is gone, it will, okay, we're free to come out now. So they're not maintaining the dangerous environment anymore. You are. Every attempt to fix yourself, to grow spiritually, to attain enlightenment, all the self-help, personal development, all assumes there's something wrong with you and you got to be fixed. It's what happened to you in the first place. So it's not safe. Defenses are still high. This is why I talk about making friends with it, inviting the pain, allowing it to be there. That creates the inner environment of safety, and that's the only thing that will liberate all of that. And you'll find that that sense of the false sense of self that's the ego that was created by the nervous system. You didn't even create it. You just started believing it was you. In fact, the witness never even believed it, right? Because the witness is beyond believing and not believing. But I won't go there right quite yet because we're on this side at this point. And this is what causes the fact that even though you've had a non-dual insight, maybe even a big non-dual glimpse, the nervous system ain't anywhere near that, right? It is still operating under exactly the same thing. So now you have to take this non-dual vision, this non-dual insight, and you have to turn back with utter compassion and love towards the suffering sense of self. And this is the outward facing path. The Vedantic path takes you here, so you see that I am the witness. It then expands, erupts into self-awareness and love. The heart and the mind become one, and now we turn it around and start moving outward, which is the path of Tantra, where that we now begin to embody in the very same energy system that has been suffering. Right? We now vow to save all suffering beings, right? Starting with me, starting with this suffering being, this particular body mind. Okay, I think it's a pretty good inner reconciliation digest, right? And that's why I called it that. We're reconciling the human nervous system and the divine insight, right? This is what the meaning of Christ and the reconciliation of man and God, right? He reconciled the two. He brought the two back together again, because the imaginary split, God representing the absolute truth of your being, and man representing the human being, the human experience, Christ representing the heart, what is the great heart of Christ, which is the heart chakra, this energy of complete love, reconciles the two, right? Which means you come back to yourself, and that self then floods the entire system with love, removing all of that old residue with unconditional love, which is always what it is that heals, and nothing else does. Okay. Let's take a look here. 15 minutes left here. Let's see what I want to take. Let's see. Ariana, Ava. French. Okay, let's see what I can get to here. I may speed up a little bit. Some of my answers were lengthy tonight. Take a drink of water. This is my kitchen, by the way. I'm renting for a bit. I like to cook. I'm not very good at it, but I like to do it. Maria C. Hi, GP. Hi, Maria. I always see myself as a third person in my memories and dreams. I thought that everyone was like me, but I was told I am not in my body, maybe because of a trauma. For me, it feels natural to me, and I love seeing my life and dreams from a third person perspective. I feel compassion and an infinite love for my character and everything around. What is the spiritual meaning of this experience? Well, there could be a disassociation or not be in the body. Matter of fact, nothing is cut and dry, right? It's never you are or you aren't, right? There's always nuances to it. Any part of you that has not been completely brought into the light of love, right? There'll be a sense of a disconnection with. I soul disconnection. I like better than not in my body or something like that, because the body is just nothing but a collection of sensations, in particular patterns, right? So I wouldn't because of the fact it doesn't seem to be creating any suffering for you. I'm not going to worry about the comment that somebody made about that. You can ask yourself that question, right? Rather than go, am I assuming it and then looking for evidence? Because in any look for evidence, you'll find it. Simply pose the question: is there something here I need to see? Is there something here I'm avoiding? Right? Now, notice that's very open, right? It's like, oh, okay, this was presented. Yeah, I see that might be a possibility, right? But maybe it isn't. In which case, I'm just going to bring this question inside, right? Now, notice what a loving feeling that is. What an absolutely open, receptive feeling that is. It gives the energy system permission to say, well, actually, yeah, there is. There is something here we'd like you to see, right? And if some uncomfortable feelings come up, go, oh, great, okay, so you are saying something to me. All right, and then you'd be willing to be with that, right? I'm not saying that there's anything right or wrong about being in the third person or being in the first person. It's like, yeah, whatever. There's many people have had spiritual experiences of just kind of being in another dimension, looking at what's going on here. Nothing wrong with that at all. There's also experience of not wanting to be in our body, which is part of what a trauma can create. So I would just be really gentle, use it as an inquiry, be curious about it, because obviously if there is something there, you want to liberate it. If there's some part of you that's still suffering, that's struggling, we want to liberate it. So just say, okay, I'm here, I'm open. If you want to show me, great, I'm listening. And then listen, right? If you don't hear anything, fine. Don't draw a conclusion either way. Don't say, nope, nothing there, or say, oh, there's got to be something there. Just stay open, right? Stay free of assumptions, right? Just stay free of your assumptions. Assume nothing, right? And be open to anything. And then just ask, right? Because our deep desire is simply to be free, to be whole, to experience the continuity of well-being and to end all suffering for ourselves and all beings. So, does that help, Maria C? Beautiful question. More pats on the back for Crispin. Way to go. Faith. Hello, my sheik. Hello, my girl and my spiritual tribe. The answer of my last question opened something in my heart. The space between the false self and the real self is becoming bigger and bigger. Wonderful, wonderful. And you are the real self. The false self is a creation of the nervous system as a defensive mechanism. It was purely protective. Purely protective. How to distinguish between an idea from higher consciousness and a shattering of the mind. I love you. Love you too. Does the idea, does it bring it with it a feeling of fear, a feeling of caution, a feeling of something's not right? Right? Does it seem to originate in the sense of I am the self, happiness and freedom are my nature, love is the most important thing in the world? If that seems to be the origin of that idea, then it is emerging from the higher consciousness. Then it is thought conforming itself to the truth of being. If it comes with any kind of, self-criticism, self-judgment, pessimism or fear, then it isn't coming from the higher consciousness. And if you're not sure, stay with it. Feel it. The idea comes, feel the idea. Right? Christ put beautifully, says this: you can't gather figs from thorns or grapes from thistles. Right? The same fountain can't send forth sweet water and bitter at the same place. Right? So the thoughts that clearly are expansive and loving and open didn't come from the same place of thoughts that are contracting and narrow and fearful. They can't come from the same place. Right? So obviously the one is the higher consciousness, because love is higher than fear, and the other is the lower. Right? And then you'll recognize that those are just patterns of thought. Nothing to see here. Move along. No big deal. Just let those thoughts pass by, and stay in that space between the false and the true, knowing that I am the true, and that knowledge will allow me to embrace and transform the false into the true, into the expression of the true, rather more accurately. Hey, Brent, good to see you. Hi, GP. Is there any correlation between tapping, chanting, and drumming? As we humans seem to have always been drawn to percussion and rhythm. I'd love to hear the musician in you answer. When are we starting a band? Wonderful. Well, I think they're kind of, there's something very specific about tapping, right? Because it's working on acupuncture points. In that sense, it's different. And people don't really tap in rhythm. It's like no, they don't do that. Using the hands, it's very tactile. It's very, the body is engaged. So, and the hands are filled with meridian points, each one of the fingertips, not just the points that you're tapping on, but the thing that's doing the tapping is also the fingers are. So, so obviously drumming, engaging in the body, it can become quite capable of releasing trauma, like massage therapy. There's a lot of yoga, a lot of things that help release trauma in the body. I use this one because it's extremely simple and easy to learn, right? Chanting is again, it's engaged in the body. It's this focused behavior. It is rhythmical. And of course, the body naturally falls into a groove. Rhythm and music they're in the body, right? That's why we all responded to rock and roll music, right? Starting with blues and jazz, we all respond to it because it's earthy. It's who we are. It's as natural as breathing. And so you pick that up with chanting. Part of the chanting is like it's a mantra because it's repetitive, so it tends to focus the mind. So there's very clear differences between the two, but I think they're all getting to essentially that same place, which is they are they're shifting our relationship with ourselves, and they're allowing the body to release the traumatic energy, and that's done by creating an inner environment of safety. So I focus on EFT because that's what I'm consciously attempting to do. If you do everything that way, right, I'm I'm drumming to release my body to make it feel more safe, to experience the beauty of it. Well, it's creating that same kind of a space, and that's the beauty of the that's the beauty of music. That's why music is so universal. We can listen to music from all sorts of different cultures, which we can do now thanks to the internet, and nobody has to explain it to you. I hear Indian bhajan, or I hear a religious chanting from Islam or Judaism, or something, from Asia. I don't need to explain to me. I don't know. Oh, this is what it means. You know what it means. You can listen to an opera in another language and get it. Listen to Luciano Pavarotti singing something. I don't need to know what he's saying. You can just, it just boom goes right through you. So, there was more to Maria's question, or is it a different GP? Sometimes I get the sensation that I'm always in the same place. My awareness is static, and all the experiences just come to me, to my awareness. Feels as if my awareness goes beyond the body, outside of the body, and like a deeper inner presence takes over. Beautiful. I would like to hear more. Yes, I think you're having some very profound experiences here, Maria. Yes, that is a very definite experience one can have of I'm not moving, everything else is, because space doesn't move. Objects move through space, but space doesn't move. And so that feeling is very much a true sense arising in you. Things are just coming in and out of to my awareness. And it goes beyond the body. Yes, it permeates the body. It is not confined to the body. This body appears in it. The way a wave would appear on the ocean, right? Or a current in the ocean, which is probably even a better example, right? So now here's what I have you do next. Pay attention to the fact that you say my awareness. Right? This awareness, are you not aware of awareness? Doesn't it require awareness to be aware of awareness? So is the awareness that's aware of awareness a different one? Are there two awarenesses? There's a very subtle one. So my awareness, or I am aware, as if awareness was an attribute of something. This is where we go beyond the mind to pure non-dual, to pure non-phenomenal recognition, as what Muji puts it. You are awareness. You don't have, it's not my awareness. Awareness is what you are. You are that. They're not two. There are not two awarenesses. So I am the awareness in which this body appears. And there is no mind. The body, I can say my body, because it belongs to awareness, but I cannot say my awareness. Because I am that. Your mind cannot grasp that. The mind must have two. So it thinks of that, well, there's me. Oh, and then there's awareness. And you ask, but okay, what's aware of the awareness? Oh, that's awareness. Oh, what's aware of the awareness? And you can go, wait a minute. The buck stops here. I am that. I am what is. That is the I am. Awareness is the I am prior even to the thought or feeling I am. Awareness had to have been there first. And awareness is the great unknowable. It is the absolute. Thank you, Maria. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Very helpful, GP says, healing who now? Thank you. Thank you, GP. Most of the time I'm shut down mentally, physically, emotionally so much. And how can I come out of shutdown so I function better day to day? First, don't put any pressure on yourself. You know, you and I just went through something together, a completely different way of approaching it than you've experienced it before. So be patient, right? Cherish the desire to open mentally, to open physically, to open emotionally, because even the desire to do that seems so remote that it got suppressed. So recognize, I am shut down. There is suffering. Okay. And I'm suffering because I'm shut down. What is the cause of this suffering? All right. Well, you and I have been over it, have started down that road of relieving it. And through the tapping, which I showed you, I think you did, there was a couple of people I worked with, sorry. All this is doing when you're using EFT is it telling the body you're safe. When you tell the body it's safe, it begins to drop the defenses, and that's the only way you get back to that pure, innocent you and allow it to express itself. That's how you do it. Patience. It is not in a big hurry to let go of these defenses, because remember, it thinks if these defenses are taken away, you die. That's the attitude it has. So no way in hell are you taking that away. So what it has to happen instead, it has to go, oh, it's safe. Finally, okay, I don't need this one. Oh, I don't need this one. At some point, it just kind of goes, oh, I don't need a lot of these. Okay. And that's the transmutation I'm talking about. That's the suffering becomes happiness. The defenses move into expressive mode. Same energy, folks. Same gold. So, my mother did not approve of me, said Mary. I'm speeding up here a little bit. Nor could she accept me. I was very different from my siblings. I now see how I've come to believe that the God of my childhood felt the same about me. Yes, you're so right, GP. Right on, GP. Thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. Yes. Well, that's what happens. God takes on those characteristics. God becomes the ultimate absolute enforcer of the ethics, morality, and code of the tribe. And this is what we have now. We have a world where you're supposed to love him, but you're terrified. You can't love and fear the same being. You can't do it. So that God isn't real. Maria says, thank you, GP. There's no pain, just a lot of compassion. So beautiful. Wonderful. Badi Ellis, can tapping help heal childhood traumas? Absolutely. I do it all day, every day. Yeah, absolutely it does. Yes, it helps. Thanks so much. Thank you, Maria. Jay, 3-year-old son is listening to Barbie Girl. Should I be concerned? Oh yeah, man. He's got to get him into trucks and stuff. Yeah, pure innocence. No, yes. Yeah. My kids are in it. I've seen girls playing with trucks, but my granddaughter tends to gravitate towards dolls and the like. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. At that age, it means nothing. There's no connotation. Something about it is appealing. Yeah. So, David and Elaine, deep thanks always, G, for your presence, wisdom, and time. Oh, you guys are so welcome. Thank you. Like the earlier time, and glad working for you. And yes, it is working for me. If you can't use both hands to tap, my left hand hurts a moment. Would I get the same result? Yeah, it doesn't matter. There are some people say, oh no, this is better. I found no difference. Actually, you can even rub them, right? You're stimulating. It's the same thing, right? Don't make a big deal out of it. Yeah, yes. It's 99% intention, right? This is just helping. The intention is safe. I need to feel safe. Liza, thank you. Have a nice one. I will. Ava, thank you. Love these satsangs. Guiding back to clear seeing. Perfect. Maria, it's just pure awareness, witnessing the experiences. Thank you. Yeah, but notice that it's very subtle. That's so this is the constant attempt to recreate a person. Yeah. So it's where we have to be vigilant. As long as there is a body, this is going to be popping up. Unless you're Buddha, there are a few where that doesn't pop up. Maria and then Siraj, thank you so much for your wisdom. You're welcome. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, we leave it there for tonight. Thank you all. Befriend your suffering. Don't be afraid of it. There's a cause to it, which means there's an end to it. And if we can remove all the places in which we are contributing to the cause, we immediately remove the rest of it. This is what the noble path is. Right views, right thoughts, right meditation, right concentration, right way of making a living, right engagement with others. All of these things undo the conditions that create suffering. You rob suffering of its fuel, and it just burns out. Thank you all. Love you. Namaste.